Hi, I'm Roberta Glass, and you're listening to my True Crime Report. Today, we're back in court with NXIVM. Another superseding indictment is coming. Is someone getting arrested next? Stay tuned. So on Thursday's hearing, Moira Prenza for the prosecution says we do intend to supersede. So another superseding indictment is coming, and many people are speculating that Sarah Bronfman may be arrested. Now, of course, no one could be arrested, and it could just be new charges, but it does make you wonder who it could be. There's a huge cast of characters to choose from. And let me know in the comments who you think, if anyone, will be arrested next. However, my favorite moment of the hearing came when the filing about the prosecution's expert, Dr. Michael Warner, who is a forensic psychiatrist, and the prosecution intends to have him testify about how NXIVM is similar to other cults. So according to the state filing, Dr. Warner is going to testify concerning how the behavior of victims of sex crimes is similar, that they delay, why they delay reporting, why victims continue to communicate with their assailant. And also he's going to testify on the effects of isolation and the effects of lack of sleep and calorie deficit on the human psyche. And in this case, on the psyche of the members of NXIVM. So, of course, Keith Raniere's lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, who I like to call Mr. 100%, stood up and said, we find that this filing is not too vague for us. It didn't give us an idea of the kind of opinions that we need to counter. And Allison Mack's lawyer stood up and he said that it did not come close to satisfying the government's responsibility. And he went on about the filing date and how it really, they didn't adhere to it. The filing date was February 25th, and they didn't give enough information. So the Moira Penza, I'm having trouble with her name, I'm sorry. She stood up and said, there is ample information in our filing for the defense to come up with an expert witness if one exists. And the judge said very quickly, Judge Garifas said, well, they can't hire a psychiatric witness. And Ms. Penza said, well, if one, if one exists to talk about how, an 800 calorie deficit is positive for the human psyche. She didn't use those exact words. I wish I had written down her exact quote. But she was basically saying that this is so obviously a cult, and the practices of NXIVM were so obviously detrimental to humans, anyone involved in NXIVM, that I'd like to see who you come up with, defense team, to counter our expert, who is incredibly qualified and has quite impressive credentials. He testified in the Pedro Hernandez trial concerning Eaton Patz and his disappearance and death. Andrea Yates, he testified in that trial. He also testified in Elizabeth Smart's trial. So it was nice to see what I was thinking brought up in court, which is like, who are they going to come up with? Dominic Dunn called these experts horrors of the court. So we saw a really great example of this in the Jodi Arias trial, when that psychologist testified about how Jodi Arias was perhaps a victim of a controlling relationship, abusive relationship, and I think her name was Violet, last name, and it was just, you could tell that she was just one of the only people they could find. So I'd like to see who Mr. 100%, who these lawyers come up with. And then the other big event I wouldn't say that was an event, that was just a moment, but in other NXIVM news that was announced at the hearing, or our first glimpse of him, Mark Garagos has been added to Claire Bronfman's defense team. And his daughter, Tenny, has been added to Keith Raniere's defense team. Now, there are some people, the Frank report is speculating that there is some big piece of evidence that the state has come across that is really damning, and Claire Bronfman is kind of building, I mean, could already argue she's already built a fortress of lawyers to protect herself and the other defendants, because she is paying for all the defendants' lawyers, and she is also paying for potential witnesses' lawyers, which is so crazy. But, however, others have speculated that Mr. 100% Mark Agnifilo is on his way out. The retainer has, which some people have speculated at $5 million for Keith Raniere's defense, is almost depleted. And he made a big speech in court, I believe it was last hearing, where he said, I intend to stick out to the end. And I was thinking about that today, and I thought, well, is that his real feelings, or is that kind of a thing that people do so that they get the credit for sticking it out to the end without sticking it out to the end? Like, I'm going to give you, I'd really like to give you my mother's engagement ring. I think it would look really great on you. And so you just announce that you're going to do it, and you get all these sort of thanks and gratitude without ever having to do it. So is he going to stick it out? Let me know what you think in the comments. I just have a lot of questions, a lot more questions than answers, unfortunately, after this hearing. And also interesting moment, the judge brought up the El Chapo trial. Now, the El Chapo trial, I'm so happy it is over, because when I was going to these hearings, when the El Chapo trial was in progress, the entire courthouse was covered in police, and you had to walk all the way around a barrier, and police cars were lined up down the street protecting the courthouse. It was really wild, and it made my trip into the courthouse a lot longer. So he mentioned that the defense is calling for a mistrial because it has come out that some of the jurors had been reading media about the trial while the trial was going on. And Judge Garifas said, I'm going to come down really hard on jurors and let them know that they could face prison time if they are looking at media concerning this trial as the trial is in process. So he let that be known as they were talking about juror selection. Now, this trial is set to go in the end of April, and the Frank report is speculating with the superseding indictment that it won't happen until probably the end of the year. Now, I think that is correct. And the reason I think that is correct is because I remember sitting in court during one of these hearings, and the judge brought up the holidays. And I thought, well, what holidays are there in the spring? Easter, if you can think of a few others, but not the kind of holidays of Christmas and Hanukkah that really disrupt a trial, or could disrupt a trial. And so I thought that maybe he has that date in mind, or that time in mind as well. And I think that is a much more realistic time frame than the end of April. I can't see this trial starting the end of April. Now, There have also been reports that Nancy Salzman and Lauren Salzman left on different doorways. I didn't see that. That none of the defendants are looking at Keith Raniere. I did get a good look at Keith Raniere, who was without his trademark, if you want to call them trademark, glasses, with his hair once again dyed very strangely, hair parted in the middle, squinting a lot. Other people said he looked red. I thought he looked a very kind of gray without color, very pale and unhealthy looking. And honestly, I don't know what this says about me, but I was looking at him and thinking, if his eyes roll in the back of his head and he starts vomiting out stuff like The Exorcist, I wouldn't at all be surprised. He looks like he could almost be demonically possessed. And that was what I was meditating on in court. Could such a thing exist? Is he just could there be some kind of supernatural evil in him? He looked so dark and sick and disturbing looking. Another interesting element of this hearing was, of course, the addition of Mark Garagos, who I didn't recognize. And I was thinking, is this another lawyer named Mark Garagos? He looks so old. And he was in this blue suit, this kind of bright blue suit, and looking like a used car salesman. And he stood up and he referenced his client, Claire Bronfman, and he put his hands on her shoulders as he was standing talking to the judge. And I thought he was going to start saying, I've known little Clary since she was a toddler. And, it just was a kind of familiarity and deference that I have never had anyone who I've hired give me. And it really made me think about Claire Bronfman and how skewed, when you have that much money, how everyone is probably happy to see you and treats you so well. I mean, she comes off as the most sour, prickly, maybe a little bit imbalanced human being when you are around her. But her view of the world her experience in the world must be so different than ours. So Mark Garagos is really, owning the courtroom, walking around, whispering, sort of stage whispering in Mr. 100%'s ear. And then Mark Agnafilo, Mr. 100%, is nodding. Okay, Judge, we got it. Like, okay, we're team Raniere Bronfman now. It's so bizarre. There are so many defense lawyers right now. And if anyone thinks that the state is the man with all the power and the money and, the money that comes, the power that comes with money, you really have to look at this trial and see how outnumbered, outstaffed they are. And there is a constant push by the defense to have the prosecution give them more material more quickly and really put pressure on them to produce. So finally, as I was leaving the courtroom, I stopped in the courthouse bathroom. And as I was walking out of the bathroom, Allison Mack walked out of the stall, and we were the only people in the bathroom. And we were both washing our hands at the same time. And I said nothing to her. And I have been thinking, what would you say? What could you say to Allison Mack in the bathroom? And I put that out to you. Did I blow it? Should I have said something? Is there anything to say? That's my question to you. What would you do? Would you give her some good advice? I mean, what could you do? What could you say?